Section 1, Core Knowledge of the Unit. Do your best to answer these questions based on your understanding of the novel, The Autobiography of Malcolm X. You may pause this video whenever you feel the need to, and you may rewind to hear questions that you may have missed or need to hear again. Number 1, why does Malcolm X think of his childhood as a nightmare? A, his parents followed the politics of Marcus Garvey. B, the state agencies do not offer the Littles any assistance. C, Malcolm's mother blames him for the family's troubles. D, the Little family is dismantled by overt and systematic racism. Number 2, Part A. Read the excerpt from the chapter Mascot. After the basketball games, there would usually be a school dance. Whenever our team walked into another school's gym for the dance, with me among them, I could feel the freeze. It would start to ease as they saw I didn't try to mix, but stuck close to someone on our team or kept to myself. I think I developed ways to do it without making it obvious. Even at our own school, I could sense it almost as a physical barrier that despite all the beaming and smiling, the mascot wasn't supposed to dance with any of the white girls. What is a commentary developed in this section? A, the competition of sports extends to social settings as well. B, children can be unnecessarily cruel to each other. C, popularity is unpredictable and unlikely to last. D, anticipated prejudice can lead a person to self-isolate. Number 3, Part B. Which literary techniques help to develop the commentary from Part A? A, simile and symbol. C, author's tone and allusion. D, figurative language and symbol. Number 4, how was Malcolm X a part of the Harlem Renaissance? A, he moved to Boston, found a job, and embraced cultural trends. B, he played saxophone in a band and played at local dance halls. C, he moved to Harlem to become an artist. D, he resumed his education and pursued a career in writing. Number 5, read these 3 sentences from chapter 11, Saved. I have often reflected upon the new vistas that reading opened to me. I knew right there in prison that reading had changed forever the course of my life. As I see it today, the ability to read awake inside me some long dormant craving to be mentally alive. Which answer best expresses the tone of these sentences? A, regretful. B, exhilarated. C, skeptical. D, persistent. Number 6, for Malcolm X, the story of Icarus represents A, his loss of fortune because he gave all his money to NOI, Nation of Islam. B, his damaged reputation as a homeboy once he becomes religious. C, his fall from favor with his wife Betty and his mentor Elijah Muhammad. D, his enlarged ego endangering his relationship with Allah. Number 7, what is Malcolm X's most important revelation about true Islam? A, Elijah Muhammad is not actually a prophet. B, prayer happens less frequently than he once thought. C, until a Muslim completes their hijab, they cannot know Allah. D, the religion is colorblind and welcomes all of humanity. Number 8, which of the following are social systems that Malcolm X interacted with? Select all that apply. A, public works. B, healthcare. C, prison. D, education. E, welfare. F, foster care. Number 9. All of the following describe Malcolm X's methods of activism except A, violence, but only in self-defense. C, legal action against corrupt systems. D, public speeches and media appearances. E, nonviolent direct action. Number 10. Which statement best summarizes Malcolm X's purpose for writing a memoir? B, he believed the book will put a stop to the lies about him. C, he knew that his mother would want the truth about his father's murder exposed. D, he thought by sharing his own transformation, he could inspire others to change. Section 3, Application to a New Text. Read the excerpts from Brian Stevenson's TED Talk below, then answer the prompt that follows. In 2012, Brian Stevenson, a lawyer who founded the Equal Justice Initiative to seek fairness in the criminal justice system, spoke about the need to talk and teach about history to overcome injustice at a TED conference. I grew up in a house that was the traditional African American home that was dominated by a matriarch. And that matriarch was my grandmother. She was tough, she was strong, she was powerful. She was the end of every argument in our family. She was the beginning of a lot of arguments in our family. She was the daughter of people who were actually enslaved. Her parents were born in slavery in Virginia in the 1840s. She was born in the 1880s, and the experience of slavery very much shaped the way she saw the world. And I remember when I was about 8 or 9 years old, waking up one morning, going into the living room, and all of my cousins were running around. And my grandmother was sitting across the room staring at me. And at first, I thought we were playing a game. And I would look at her and I'd smile, but she was very serious. And after about 15 or 20 minutes of this, she got up and she came across the room and she took me by the hand and said, "Come on, Brian, you and I are going to have a talk." And I remember this just like it happened yesterday. I will never forget it. She took me out back and said, "Brian, I'm going to tell you something, but you don't tell anybody what I tell you." I said, "Okay, Mama." She said, "Now you make sure you don't do that." I said, "Sure." Then she sat me down and she looked at me and said, "I want you to know I've been watching you." And she said, "I think you're special." She said, "I think you can do anything you want to do." I will never forget it. And then she said, "I just need you to promise me 3 things, Brian." I said, "Okay, Mama." She said, "The first thing I want you to promise me is that you will always love your mom." She said, "That's my baby girl, and you have to promise me now you'll always take care of her." Well, I adored my mom, so I said, "Yes, Mama, I'll do that." Then she said, "The second thing I want you to promise me is that you will always do the right thing, even when the right thing is the hard thing." And I thought about it and I said, "Yes, Mama, I'll do that." Then she finally said, "The third thing I want you to promise me is that you will never drink alcohol." Laughter. Well, I was 9 years old, so I said, "Yes, Mama, I'll do that." And I'm going to admit something to you. I'm 52 years old, and I'm going to admit to you that I've never had a drop of alcohol. Applause. I don't say that because I think that's virtuous. I say that because there is power in identity. When we create the right kind of identity, we can say things to the world around us that they don't actually believe make sense. We can get them to do things that they don't think they can do. When I thought about my grandmother, of course, she would think all her grandkids were special. My grandfather was in prison during Prohibition. My male uncles, died of alcohol related diseases. And these were the things she thought we needed to commit to. Well, I've been trying to say something about our criminal justice system. This country is very different today than it was 40 years ago. In 1972, there were 300,000 people in jails and prisons. Today, there are 2.3 million. The United States now has the highest rate of incarceration in the world. We have 7 million people on probation and parole. And mass incarceration, in my judgment, has fundamentally changed our world. In poor communities, in communities of color, there is this despair. There is this hopelessness that is being shaped by these outcomes. 1 out of 3 Black men between the ages of 18 and 30 is in jail, in prison, on probation, or parole. In urban communities across the country, Los Angeles, Philadelphia, Baltimore, Washington, 50 to 60% of all young men of color are in jail or prison or on probation or parole. Our system isn't just being shaped in these ways that seem to be distorting around race. They're also distorted by poverty. We have a system of justice in this country that treats you better if you're rich and guilty than if you're poor and innocent. Wealth, not culpability, shapes outcomes, and yet we seem to be very comfortable. The politics of fear and anger have made us believe that these problems that are not our problems. We've been disconnected. It's interesting to me. We look at some very interesting developments in our work. My state of Alabama, like a number of states, actually permanently disenfranchises you if you have a criminal conviction. Right now in Alabama, 34% of the Black male population has permanently lost the right to vote. We're actually projecting in another 10 years, the level of disenfranchisement will be as high as it's been since prior to the passage of the Voting Rights Act. And there is this stunning silence. I had the great privilege when I was a young lawyer of meeting Rosa Parks. And Miss Parks used to come back to Montgomery every now and then. And she would get together with 2 of her dearest friends, these older women, Johnny Carr, who was the organizer of the Montgomery bus boycott, amazing African American woman, and Virginia Durr, a white woman whose husband, Clifford Durr, represented Dr. King. And these women would get together and just talk. And every now and then, Miss Carr would call me and she'd say, Brian, Miss Parks is coming to town. We're going to get together and talk. Do you want to come over and listen? And I say, yes, ma'am, I do. And she'd say, well, what are you going to do when you get here? I said, I'm going to listen. And I'd go over there and I would just listen. It would be so energizing and so empowering. And one time, I was over there listening to these women talk. And after a couple hours, Miss Parks turned to me and said, now, Brian, tell me what the Equal Justice Initiative is. Tell me what you're trying to do. And I began giving her my rap. I said, well, we're trying to challenge injustice. We're trying to help people who have been wrongfully convicted. We're trying to confront bias and discrimination in the administration of criminal justice. We're trying to end life without parole sentences for children. We're trying to do something about the death penalty. We're trying to reduce the prison population. We're trying to end mass incarceration. I gave her my whole rep, and when I finished, she looked at me and she said, mm-mm-mm. She said, that's going to make you tired, tired, tired. Laughter. And that's when Miss Carr leaned forward. She put her finger in my face. She said, that's why you've got to be brave, brave, brave. We need to find ways to embrace these challenges, these problems, the suffering, because ultimately our humanity depends on everyone's humanity. I've learned very simple things doing the work that I do. It's just taught me very simple things. I've come to understand and to believe that each of us is more than the worst thing we've ever done. I believe for every person on the planet. I think if somebody tells a lie, they're not just a liar. I think if somebody takes something that doesn't belong to them, they're not just a thief. I think even if you kill someone, you're not just a killer. And because of that, there's this basic human dignity that must be respected by law. I also believe that in many parts of this country, and certainly in many parts of this globe, that the opposite of poverty is not wealth. I don't believe that. I actually think in too many places, the opposite of poverty is justice. And finally, I believe that despite the fact that it is so dramatic and so beautiful and so inspiring and so stimulating, we will ultimately not be judged by our technology. We won't be judged by our design. We won't be judged by our intellect and reason. Ultimately, you judge the character of a society not by how they treat their rich and the powerful and the privileged, but by how they treat the poor, the condemned, the incarcerated. Because it's in that nexus that we actually begin to understand truly profound things about who we are. Number 12. How does Brian Stevenson develop a social commentary through his TED Talk? You may pause the video and begin working on your powerful paragraph. You can also feel free after you finish your powerful paragraph to go back to any of the questions that you missed, that you may have missed earlier in the video.